Welcome back, folks. It's Crazy Welder. It has been a rather busy week for me, so I apologize for the slow uploads, but in today's video I wanted to go over some really awesome things that have been happening on the PS4 as well as the Switch scene for, a couple of weeks now that are just absolutely mind-blowing, to say the least. Now, first of which is that the PlayStation 4 has finally received a newer exploit for the 7.55 firmware. And this is major news because previously the last firmware, if I recall correctly, was version 5.55 that allowed you to run basically unsigned code. And the problem with this specific exploit was that any modern games essentially needed to be backported to this firmware in order to work properly, to run, etc. And that also meant that it required a lot more work to get your modern titles essentially running on your jailbroken PS4. Now, with the 7.55 explode, despite not being the latest, because the latest firmware I believe is 8.4 or 8.04, it does mean that we're able to run more modern software on this console without necessarily backporting. And also conjoined with this release is Mira, which is a set of tools that allows you to run additional applications on your now jailbroken PS4. Of course, what this means is that emulation is going to get a nice shot in the arm, allowing more developers to jump on board and start developing more homebrew, as well as we'll probably see a number of different FPS mods that'll come out. So hopefully things like Bloodborne at 60 FPS are going to reach a lot more players. Possibly we may even see folks that are pushing their PlayStation 4s into overclocking and with some liquid cooling being involved, potentially maybe even getting us to a point where we could run The Last of Us 2 at higher frame rates or at unlocked frame rates, again allowing for some really great mods in order to bump up graphics just that little bit higher, potentially increasing the number of folks that are getting in on this scene, as well as doing something that I think a lot of us have been wanting for quite some time, which is getting Resident Evil 7 running in VR on PC properly. Now, for a very long time, we have had to essentially resort to streaming the game from our PC in some kind of side-by-side format using, applications like Tate VR or using WarpX, essentially creating a hacked side-by-side image that would then be sent to your headset, be it Google Cardboard, be it your hacked PSVR headset, or, your Vive, Oculus, what have you. Now, if the jailbroken PS4 allows us to take a look at the files of Resident Evil 7 on the PlayStation 4, it may be possible to reverse engineer some of that and bring it back over on the PC to get a more native sort of virtual reality support, as well as potentially allowing us to use proper VR controls as opposed to having a hacked together sort of solution where we're still using a controller but we have head tracking. So we can most likely see something like this come down the pipe, and potentially other PSVR exclusives that previously would have been locked to, the PlayStation ecosystem now might finally get some support on the PC side. Since the code base, as I would imagine, between those two tends to be divergent, and even though we've had games that were on the PS4 that then came back to PC which had VR support, such as for example Tetris, we've also seen Battlezone come from the PS4 to the PC side, but by and large there isn't really too much to glean there unless we're looking at those games being reversed on the PlayStation side as well. However, I think this is going to be potentially a shot in the arm for VR development on PC as well, getting some of those mods out there, as we have all been having a huge hankering for VR on Resident Evil games for quite some time, and I imagine this is going to be pretty big news. I wouldn't be surprised if an announcement is made by a team shortly where this project actually gets underway, which of course would be, massive news, since there is a very slim chance that Sony would actually be releasing their VR port to the PC, as it has been a number of years now since Resident Evil 7 has released. We've seen a number of other Resident Evil games come and go, and now Resident Evil 8 is coming out, and I have a strong feeling that if that game does get VR support, it probably won't be coming to the PC. It'll most likely be relegated to something like the PlayStation 5's PSVR 2.0, if that's the route that they're going to take. It's a little bit too hard to know just yet, but that is something that'll most likely be coming down the pipe pretty soon. And last but not least, we have got a VR mod for Zelda's Breath of the Wild game. Now, this appears to be running on the Dolphin emulator in some shape or form, so it is unlikely that it is Switch specific. However, given that we have seen some VR releases on the Switch with their proprietary cardboard VR setup, it may be likely that we can see something like this happening at some point. However, for the time being, it is running through this emulator and the mod is underway. Now, they've released some footage of all of this working and it looks absolutely fantastic. It seems to be running in conjunction with the first-person mod. However, it does work in third person as well if you prefer to play the game in a more classical way. However, it does not look like it's quite ready for public release just yet. Details are a little bit muddy on when or if that's going to actually hit the public. However, we are likely going to see this happen pretty soon. The gameplay looks absolutely mind-blowing, and I think if you've got decent enough hardware, there's a good chance that when this drops, you'll be able to run this at pretty decent frame rates, as the emulator we have seen running this title at 4K and even 8K resolutions on some users' machines who have the grunt to be able to actually push it. And granted that those folks are getting easily in the 300 FPS range on some of these hardware configurations, it would be entirely reasonable to see something like, for example, the Valve Index being run with this game at potentially 144 Hertz, full high refresh rates, and basically running on the PC as well. Now, they appear to be showing this off on Oculus hardware. However, I don't think it really matters too much. Right now, the VR inputs aren't quite properly matched up to, PC VR standards, so they're still using a sort of hacked together method. However, it looks absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm hoping that we'll finally get to be able to see a playable port of this for everyone, at which point I will most definitely be covering it as much as possible. Now, to segue into the last part of this video, I finally got my hands on an NVIDIA 3090 RTX card, which means I'll be doing a couple more comparisons, going back to my 1080 Ti, showing you guys some really awesome gameplay footage in VR, and hopefully be able to get some really great frame rate comparisons and whether or not it is ultimately a card that is going to be worth it. Now, let me just show you guys the card so you can get kind of an idea of what it looks like. I know a bunch of reviews have already covered it in, quite a few different videos, but you really do have to see the size of this thing for yourselves. So as you can see, the card is an absolute behemoth. It is essentially what looks like a dual or possibly even triple slot card, given just the gigantic size of it. You can see right here just the number of slots that this thing takes up. It's basically a good size of my forearm here. Pretty much covers my entire forearm, if not more, so it's incredibly long as well. Of course, you can see that there are dual fans in this, particular Founders Edition GPU, so one on each side, essentially doing a blow-through design. Now, I do plan on at some point giving this thing the liquid cooling treatment because I don't want it taking up 3 slots in my machine. However, I think that, potentially this will be something that happens quite a bit further down the road. I'm not 100% sure yet where we'll land with that. Hopefully sometime during the summer when I have a little bit more finances freed up, I'll be able to do a better comparison on this. Now, something else that I'll be bringing you guys with this particular GPU is I'll be doing some AI video enhancement running on my 1080 Ti, as well as this GPU, just to show you guys how much of a difference it makes in terms of render times using Topaz Video AI. And I think that we'll see a massive improvement with this card, given the huge amount of cores that this has in terms of CUDA cores as an advantage versus the 1080 Ti specifically. Now, obviously, of course, this also has the memory advantage being 24 gigs and it's much faster RAM. But however, with that said, look out for more videos with this GPU, me doing some VR comparisons, and hopefully running things like Metroid Prime in VR as well on this GPU, and we should see some really great frame rates there, allowing us to get some quality footage. So again, you guys, thanks for chiming in, thanks for looking at the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.